94% of people with a serious legal problem will not use the court system there to help them because they feel it's for rich people and powerful people. 84% of people won't even see a lawyer.
So the government is pushing the industry to evolve faster than it would normally have. And I think that is also one of the reasons why the technology is going to keep on pushing forward, because governments are pushing for that technology as well.
More compliance, greater profitability, happier clients. That's what the technology that we're starting to see come out is doing. Nothing replaces the human interaction between a professional and a client in need, whether it's a doctor, whether it's an architect, or whether it's a lawyer.
Welcome to the App for Legal podcast. I am your host, and today we have a very special guest with us, Mark Beer. Mark is here to share his insights and expertise on the current trends in the legal industry, as well as cutting-edge legal tech software. Hello, Mark.
How are you, Rodina?
I'm good, thank you. Mark, you are Mr. Law Tech.
Thank you.
You're a professor of AI and the law in Shanghai. You're a visiting fellow at Oxford University, a co-founder of Oxford's Deep Tech Dispute Resolution Lab. You're a faculty member of the Legal Technology and Innovation Institute, chairman of the AIFC Legal Technology Advisory Board in Kazakhstan, and a member of the UK government's Commercial Dispute Resolution Task Force, which is part of its Law Tech Delivery Panel. You spent over 20 years in the Middle East. You were named one of the top 50 most influential Brits in the UAE. You were also on Forbes magazine's top 50 most influential expats in the UAE. You were appointed an officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire by Queen Elizabeth II, and you have twice been shortlisted as UK Solicitor of the Year for in-house. All that, I hear, with an even more talented wife and 5 children.
Absolutely right. Behind any success, there's always going to be a talented partner, and so I'm very blessed to have a wonderful wife and 5 wonderful children, and to be here talking about law tech.
Well, you're very welcome, and I have a dozen questions about your work, but I think we should dive into the topics of our podcast for today. Mark, as you know, a lot is being discussed about legal tech in the legal industry. How do you define legal tech?
Well, I think there's 2 different concepts. Legal tech, which is about making law firms more efficient, making in-house departments more efficient, more able to do their job, more able to comply with regulations, more able to share knowledge. That's what I call legal tech. And then there's law tech. And law tech is a systemic approach to addressing what I believe is a justice chasm, which is the gap between the needs of citizens and the ability of society to deliver legal advice and justice. So legal tech tends to be more focused on law firms and in-house teams. Law tech is about systemic change to enhance access to justice. Okay,
and within legal tech, I'm sure there are certain pillars that are being used every day. One of them is the law practice management solution. What would you say is the key advantage of implementing it?
Well, law practice management is about digitizing, in a way, making more efficient, more compliant the way a law firm operates. So if you think about a classical law firm, someone's recording their time, someone's adding up the time they've recorded, somebody's sending an invoice out, somebody's chasing an invoice, and you've got the lawyers delivering the legal advice, and you're checking in with clients as to whether they're happy with what's going on, and you're dealing with regulatory pressures in the jurisdictions in which you're op, and. And it was generally done by different departments. Finance did the accounts, and this department did that, and compliance did this, and what we're finding now with technology, particularly across Europe, where this is very nascent, and it's such a massive marketplace and opportunity for it, but what we're finding is law firms are saying, give me a platform. Rather like the banks in the fintech evolution, they were operating off multiple channels, different departments, spoke to different banks. It was very inefficient. Whilst with law firms now, they're running often quite an inefficient shop, and the purpose of technology is to give a single platform. And that platform allows the law firm to deliver better service to clients, to better comply with regulation, and to better and more efficiently operate their business. What does it mean? More compliance, greater profitability, happier clients. That's what the technology that we're starting to see come out is doing.
So you mean moving away from legacy tools into more cost-effective and efficient tools is also part of it, right?
Yeah, so the way that law firms are starting to transition into a digital environment is that they're they're realizing that the silos in which they've operated, accounts department, compliance department, legal department, the lawyers, the client satisfaction department, they haven't been well integrated. They're often using legacy systems. They're invoicing through one platform, collecting through another platform, as an example. And what we're seeing now, particularly through Europe, but also to some extent through the US and definitely in the rest of the world, is we're seeing law firms realize the efficiency of using a single platform that brings it all together.
Faster communication.
Faster communication. I mean, at the end of the day, it's three things. One, better client service. Your client is much more able to interact with you. You've got a better sense of how happy your client is. Two, more profitability, because you're operating in a more efficient way. So you're going to be much more profitable as a law firm. And the third is more compliant, because you've got technology that's supporting your compliance team to make sure you're always compliant with the latest regulation. So all in all, if you get practice management right, you have a single platform to deliver better client outcomes, more profitability in a more compliant way.
Okay. And another hot topic in the industry is contract lifecycle management and document automation. And it's just not just in the legal industry, but you've seen it across different industries as well. We've seen a rise of demand within procurement department, human resource department, real estate department, even sales. Do you think it's also cost effectiveness that is driving this shift?
I think to some extent it's a synthesis, isn't it? To one extent, we don't have everyone in the same office anymore. People are working remotely, people are working in different countries. So pulling together the ability to coordinate negotiating a contract, concluding a contract, and most importantly, this is what people forget, right? How many times have we signed a contract, we put it in the drawer, and we only pull it out if there's a problem? And I promise you, when you pull that contract out, there's a really big problem. So proper contract lifecycle management is about constantly monitoring performance against a relational contracting model. And what that means is most contracts are a relationship between two companies, two individuals, a company and an individual, but there's normally a human connection. I've got to deliver, you've got to pay, or you've got to deliver and I've got to do something else. If we maintain the relationship and we keep checking in to make sure that the contract ties in with that relationship, we can adjust along the way without falling out. But we haven't until now built platforms that can not only negotiate, implement, and then monitor the contract through the life cycle. And that's why organizations are pursuing it. It means that they're less likely to end up in a dispute with an important customer or supplier.
And does it cut down a bit more on the legal department's job when you have contract lifecycle management within these big corporations, even in the smaller corporations?
So I used to work with an amazing guy, and he would walk, when I was general counsel for MasterCard across South Asia, Middle East and Africa, he'd walk in, he'd say, "Mark, could you draft a contract?" So I'd say, "Of course I can draft a contract. What's it about?" He'd say, "Well, you're the lawyer. It's like a contract." I'd say, "I know, but you're the sales guy, so what have you agreed?" So he said, "Oh, it's in this SMS message." And there was a sense in those days that, oh, it's legal, it has to go to a lawyer. Those days have gone. And actually, even in those days, what we started to see was if the contract complies with certain criteria, it doesn't go to legal. So if it's in a standard form, if it's less than $1 million, and if it's approved by 2 different executives, it doesn't go to legal. Where we're getting to now is that even the negotiation of the contract and the conclusion of the contract and the monitoring is not going to the legal department unless there's a red flag. So, for example, the other side might insist on an unlimited indemnity in the contract. That would be a red flag in any contracting environment. You don't want to leave it to AI, and you don't want to leave it to people who don't understand what that means in terms of liability. That would go to the legal team to say, hang on, no, we can't have that, or to negotiate it. But for 99% of contracts that organizations sign, they don't even know they've signed them, right? Because it's an email. Yeah. But for 99% of the ones they sign, there's no need for it to go to the legal team. And that allows the legal team to be truly representing the business, supporting the business in a growth agenda, not in a sort of de minimis, bottom of the pile, I need a contract to buy, a photocopier in the Milan office. That doesn't need to go to what can be very expensive internal lawyers or external lawyers.
Again, reducing the time spent by the lawyers, so reducing the cost on them as well.
And reducing the risk. Because the risk of losing a deal because it's stuck with the lawyers, or the risk of getting it wrong because the lawyer's too busy and just signs it off, that goes away when you've got technology analysing the contract and saying, no, this is fine, this contract's fine, it fits the parameters, there's nothing unusual, go ahead and sign. So you not only enhance the speed with which you can contract, but you also reduce the risk to the business of entering into a contract, that perhaps isn't what it should be.
So one of legal tech's strong points is leveraging technology to enhance service delivery and decision making. What areas of improvement have been the most noticeable since the adaptation? And what other areas, although maybe not quantifiable, have flourished under legal tech?
Well, look, service delivery is about customer satisfaction. At the end of the day, it's not been something the law profession's been very good at. It's sort of, well, you pay the bill and that must mean you're happy. But it is a service industry. It's a service sector. So how can one tell using technology, is my client still happy with what I'm doing? Now, one simple way, which has been going on for years, is send them a questionnaire. But if you're an unhappy client and you get a questionnaire to fill out, you're like, oh my goodness, it just gets worse and worse. So what we're starting to see models doing now is they're starting to analyze the tonality of messages from the client, the cadence of messages from the client, and spotting differences. So let's say, you've got a client, it starts out really well, it's very positive messaging, they reply, you reply, it's fast, it's good, there's a lot of enthusiasm in it. And the AI can tell through the platform, maybe the email tone changes or the speed of the client response changes, or you're not getting that WhatsApp message back when you thought you might, or there's hostility. Then the AI can say, look, there's a relationship issue brewing in this, and either have somebody else step in or at least say to the lawyer, it seems to us that this relationship is deteriorating, what's going wrong. So you can preempt the upset client well in advance by using technology to analyze the messages you're getting from the client.
And do you think in the other part of it is it's more digitized, right? So even the relationship between the lawyer and his client is a bit more digitized. So you're moving away from that personal relationship with your client. Do you think from the other side that the client has an issue with it being that digital? Would he prefer the old-fashioned way of having his lawyer on speed dial, or any of the old methods of communication with him where he had calling him all the time?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And I think you've hit an important point, which is technology isn't there to replace the humanity that's involved in the law. If you want to be a lawyer, to be a good lawyer, you've got to care about people, because it's your job to help them solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
So if you care about people, you can't digitize care. What you can digitize is the environment which provides the back office services to the client. You can provide the client direct access to all of their files. You can make sure that invoicing happens as they want it. You can check in and make sure that the correspondence that's going on is, the tonality is right. But nothing replaces the human interaction between a professional and a client in need, whether it's a doctor, whether it's an architect, or whether it's a lawyer. And it's what we forget when we talk about technology taking over the legal profession. It's not taking over, it's supporting. And if a lawyer can spend 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day interacting with the client, understanding what they need, helping them through the situation, holding their hand, that's far more valuable to the client than time, as you say, filling out bits of paper and
sending and receiving.
Sending and receiving. So I think you've really hit an very important point with technology, which is it's not there to replace. It's there to improve. It's there to make better, right?
Yeah. Legal tech, by definition, is an evolving notion. Where do you see integration opportunities for further development? And what might be the challenges?
So I don't know whether technology is evolving in and of itself. I think it's evolving as a result of both regulatory and client inputs. And I think that's where we're going to see the majority of pressure on the adoption of legal technology. It will not come from the lawyers themselves. As you say, it's not a system that changes quickly. But as we saw with fintech, if regulators start to push and say it's your duty to use the best technology you can to be the most efficient lawyer you can for your client, that will drive adoption. And if the clients also start pushing and saying, I don't want to pay for document review, as one of the major global banks has done now, suddenly their lawyers no longer use hundreds of junior lawyers for document review, they use AI instead. So I think if we can start to see a push from regulators and a push from the clients, we will see much faster adoption of legal technology.
We've seen some of this in some countries where the government pushed to have certain laws embedded, for example, for tax purposes, whether it's a QR code on an invoice or something quite similar. So the government is pushing the industry to evolve faster than it would normally have. And I think that is also one of the reasons why the technology is going to keep on pushing forward, because governments are pushing for that technology as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And lawyers do resist pressure from government, but they can't resist pressure from the regulator, their regulators. Now, legal regulators tend to comprise pale, stale males, unfortunately, around the world. So they've made a lot of money, they go into the regulator. They don't really want to disrupt the status quo. They know it, they trust it, and it works. But I think as we start to see more dynamic regulation, and particularly cross-border, as we start to see more dynamic regulation of law firms and lawyers, I think we will see this push towards using technology to make the law firm more efficient, but most importantly, to be compliant and to deliver a better service.
We both know how important it is to stay updated with the best tech, whether it's in legal tech or any other industry. If you had one advice to give lawyers who are still hesitant to embrace legal tech, what would it be?
Learn more about it. Overcome that fear, because there is a concern that change is bad. Change isn't good, change isn't bad. Change is change. And the marketplace is changing, and the client expectation is changing. So do I think in the next 10 years that lawyers who don't adapt will struggle? Probably not. They'll probably find clients who are of the same mentality.
Mindset.
But if we look to the medium term, and possibly sooner, lawyers that don't embrace AI will underperform lawyers who do perform AI. And I think that's got to be the key in people's minds when they're thinking, why should I? The answer is because if you don't, you will fall behind, not only for yourself as a lawyer, but also for the customers that you're serving, your clients who are coming to you for help. And probably most of all, you'll fall behind from a compliance perspective, because it cannot be that regulators will continue to allow lawyers to use inefficient historic practices where technology has been proven to be not only faster, but also more accurate.
I would think that anybody that graduated law school in most of those big law schools already has an advantage on somebody who graduated maybe 7 years ago and still hasn't embraced legal tech, because they are learning legal tech today in universities.
True. I mean, that's absolutely true. We come back to what's the job of a lawyer? Yeah. Is it to be a technologist? Is it to be an administrator? Is it to record their time? No, none of those things. The job of a lawyer, pure and simple, is to help people. And the more time that can be freed up through the use of technology, through the use of process, through the use of contract lifecycle management, whatever it is, the more time we can free up to allow a professional to do their job properly, the better it is for their clients and for their customers. So is it right that a lawyer leaving or a student leaving law school who's dabbled in law tech is going to be better off? Probably not. Because we're not training them to be technologists. But what it will do, hopefully, is it allows the senior members of the firm to spend more time training up, developing and imparting knowledge, teaching soft skills, questioning skills, helping skills, and then applying all of that knowledge that we get from clients, which can be unstructured, right? It's unstructured. Assimilate that data and put it through a tool which gives us an indication of the answer, and then apply common sense and mercy and compassion in the way in which we convey the way forward to the client. So I think it will definitely help, but it isn't going to replace experience, and it isn't going to replace compassion when it comes to the delivery of legal services.
Another pillar of legal tech is contract lifecycle management and document automation, which is now a very hot topic, not just in the legal space, but also across different industries. We've seen a rise in demand for CLM from human resources, procurement departments, real estate departments, and sometimes even sales. Do you think it was the cost effectiveness of having that in-house that drove this shift?
Yes, I think it is. I think that's part of it. I think there's also, as we come out of COVID now, or out of COVID, people are more dispersed. So trying to get teams to connect around a particular contract isn't like all turning up in a meeting room as it used to be. So you've got convenience, you've got cost efficiency. You've also got the compression of time that it takes to conclude a contract.
And even e-signature as well, no?
Yeah, you add an e-signature on at the
well.
end. Look at the app for legal as an example. Historically, when somebody wanted to sign a contract, they'd normally walk into their in-house lawyer's office, they'd mutter something about a contract, it would go on a pile, I know because I was that lawyer, it goes on a pile, you wait for someone to chase you, then you get around to doing it or trying to farm it out to another law firm, then it's turned around, then the other side comes back and they want some changes, then your side wants some changes, then head office wants some changes, and you can be weeks and weeks and weeks into a process which isn't really a legal process, more commercial. If we look at like the app for legal module, so the way that we can compress it now is with the contract lifecycle is not only does it help with the drafting of the contract using AI, it then moves into the negotiation of the contract, particularly non-legal points, allowing teams across the business to feed in real time. It then moves into the execution of the contract, so you're not sending couriers around the world like we did in the old days. Yeah. And then, and I think the key is, it's then monitoring the contract for compliance, making sure that the parties are complying in real time with the contract, rather than waiting for something to go wrong, pulling it out of the drawer and trying to work backwards. So I think you're right. Cost efficiency is one element.
And it's easier access, right? It's all in one space. It's easier for anybody that has is one of the stakeholders in that contract to have access as well.
Yes, that's right. You don't have to go to the gatekeeper, the lawyer or the accounts department to get hold of the contract. To be honest, though, I mean, we've had access to contractual documentation within businesses for 2 decades now. There'd be sort of storage within. So I think that's one element of it. But the real acceleration is around consensual negotiation from a dispersed group of participants, leading to execution. And then I would say critically is the management piece afterwards, keeping an eye on it, making sure the contract remains valid. And the ability, and I think App for Legal have done it now, but the ability to pull that into one, to synthesize all of those processes into one, means that for organizations with large-scale contracting, it takes a huge amount of efficiency into the process.
Mark, a tweet you recently shared caught my attention. I'm going to read it out. I laughed when I read about the risk of biased and incomplete data sets being used in courts, as if things before AI assistant for judges were perfect, unbiased, and judges had all the time in the world to consider the entire picture. What misconception were you battling there?
It's the misconception that we have perfection in the system. It's a misconception that people want to use the courts. That's not true. 94% of people with a serious legal problem will not use the court system there to help them because they feel it's for rich people and powerful people. 84% of people won't even see a lawyer. What kind of society are we in where people who are pained with legal troubles don't even want to see a professional who can help them? So it's the context around it was, let's not use AI and the law and AI and justice because it isn't perfect. And what I suppose frustrates me and amuses me is this perception that the current system is perfect. The 29 million backlog cases in India is perfect. The 40 million backlog cases in Brazil is perfect. Every judge that we have is totally unbiased, has no historic bias in the way that they deliver. Every judge has the benefit of all the information in front of them when making a decision. It's nonsensical to restrict technology on the basis that we're living in a perfect world. We're not. What we use technology for is to make it a bit better. And if we can make technology deliver for citizens, our community, our family, our friends, a little bit better tomorrow than today, we will use technology to deliver a better society. And that's why I made that tweet. That's why it infuriates me when people say we shouldn't do it because it isn't perfect. Let's not let perfection be the enemy of the best.
Nothing ever started out perfect.
It never starts perfect. And it never ends perfect. Because as you said earlier, it will always evolve. It will always develop. But can it be better? And if technology allows us to be better, fairer, more merciful, more compassionate, then isn't that a good reason to use it rather than not?
Of course. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Mark, it was a pleasure. Thank you for being with us. And we look forward to the second podcast that we will be having together.
Fantastic. Look forward to it. Thanks very much, Rodina.
Thank you.